How you doing? Bob, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks, Coach. You're really good. Great to talk to you.
Great to talk to you, man.
Thanks for the shout. Thanks for the shout out. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's just me leading off here, so I'm going to get rolling. I was very, very pleased, very excited. Today was our first day in full pads, and obviously just good to get out there and hear the pods pop and the pads pop. And really, I thought overall pretty pleased. There's definitely a lot of work to do. When you start focusing in on certain things, when the pads come on, some other things get left behind. So got to teach them that they got to keep moving forward. I do think 3 practices into it, we've stepped forward every day. I haven't had any regression. Certain players have jumped out. Some guys making catches, some guys making tackles, some guys making blocks, some guys getting off blocks. So overall, very well pleased. But there's a couple things that come to our mind, right? I told our guys today, like simple thing, right? As we're getting into our first intense high pad, high physical intensity, we got a little bit loose with the ball. So as we start concentrating on the physical intensity, we maybe lose track of our focus on a play-to-play routine and get focused on things we don't need to. So you'll hear me say it repeatedly over and over again. More games are lost than won. Before you can start winning games, you got to stop from losing them. So we're really staying in that world, trying to stay in our lane, do things right, and see where it goes. So week 1 is behind us. We never get it back. We got 4 in front of us. We got to take full advantage of it, and I think these guys are locked into that. So really from an injury standpoint, got through the week pretty healthy. Got some guys that have maybe been banged up, some bumps and bruises, some different things. I don't think anybody that we started practice with on Tuesday to where we are on Saturday, no one's in a position. There's a couple guys that might miss a week or 2, but there isn't anybody that's going to miss the entire spring, have stayed away from any significant injuries. So that'll be a day-by-day progress. When you guys are in there, a lot of our injured guys are out are in the inside working with Tank and Jeremy and his crew on the rehab. So the part that I've liked about this group is they lock into that part. Anybody that's been banged up, and the recovery part has been very, very good. So really no news right there, just a lot of positives and hopefully some things to build upon. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Abby, go ahead.
Okay, sorry, Coach. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me on that baseball.
No, you're good.
But I'm going to go back to something I asked you last week. Your family's in Champaign now. How does it feel to be with them?
It was great. I actually flew back yesterday and was able to grab them and come back. I think I get reminded on a daily basis. I'm just like every other father in this world. I was very excited to see my daughters, my wife, come all the way across the country and to land, to bring back to reality. We got a chance to tour their school as a dad does. Got a chance to see that last night, which was awesome. And our youngest dog decided to have a little bit of an episode. So I got to visit the U of I Veterinary Med Center for small animals and remain undetected. I had a nice little mask on, a little cover up. And while that was going on, it was funny. My wife was in with Ricky, our youngest dog. And so I took Bella and Brex around the veterinary facilities, and we went and looked at the cows, and then we went and looked at a donkey, and then we caught a goat, and then we saw horses, and she goes, "Daddy, they're galloping," and they were running. I was pretty impressed. But what was amazing to me, I got in to my office early this morning, and I had an email from the veterinary school. They had saw me around the facilities last night with an open tour anytime I wanted it. So I didn't get detected in the med center, but I got detected around the vet clinic with me and my daughter. So we're looking forward to getting around U of I campus more and more.
Yeah, and then I know you haven't seen your daughters in 3 months. What was that feeling like when you first saw them after you got off the plane yesterday?
It was pretty overwhelming. They've grown so much, even though they're only, Brexley is about, she just turned 2, and Bella is a little over 3.5 years old. They've grown so much. They speak so much. They say so much. They didn't like the bounciness of the plane, but I think that's something we can't avoid. So other than that, it's been a pretty uneventful day, and we get moved into our house on Monday, and looking forward to it.
I also heard your youngest daughter can now do the ILL chant. Is that true?
They're very, very, very proficient in ILL, INI. What I do as a dad, I know that the more I run them, the tighter they get, and the earlier they go to bed. So we were having tag relay races in the house, trying to wear them out a little bit. They would do a tag team back and forth, and I'd go ILL, INI, and then it was a race. So we're trying to be creative in our coaching.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Coach, I got a couple of big picture things.
Yes.
You're coming about up on 3 months, I believe here. Well, tell me what your feelings are. What can you do here? What can happen here? Not tomorrow, but like long term. What do you think the potential is for this place? Knowing what you know now that you didn't maybe know 3 months ago.
Well, I think, there's a couple things that jump out to me. First, to have an athletic director who actually walked the walk of our players, right? So Josh, not only did he play here, he played a lot here. And he's a very good football player, went on to play in the NFL, obviously got a degree from here, and that's built him into what he is today. I've had that a little bit in the past, when I was with Coach Alvarez, even though he didn't play Wisconsin, he played college football in Nebraska, and he knew what he was building there. And I think the same vision comes here with Josh. Josh knows what he's seen here have success. He knows what the end all goal is, and he's trying to give us everything we can to provide that. And walk hand in hand with somebody like that it's pretty surreal. But just overall, the whole university, I mentioned that about, just being in the vet med area yesterday and being greeted by an email this morning to welcome me in anytime I want with my girls. It's just like the feeling on this campus through this whole COVID thing, and even all the head coaches. I've had one-on-one Zoom meetings with women's coaches, with the men's coaches. Got a bag of gear yesterday from Coach Hartlib, some baseball gear. I can't wait to get in the stands and watch one of them and watch them compete. I think the overall feeling in this campus is pretty special. And then I would tell you the big question, right? The $1 million question I got when I came here was, building up relationships in the state of Illinois with the high school coaches. And we've really kind of approached it in two different ways. There's obviously the Chicagoland area that's always being recruited, but I think the part that needs to stand out is, for Illinois to be successful, downstate Illinois has to be here. All right. That's kind of like when I've been at these other places and, the Iowa kids make up the Iowa program, the Wisconsin kids make up the Wisconsin program, and Kansas made up the Kansas State program. I think Illinois has got to be made up by especially these downstate kids. There's a lot of talent here. They've traditionally been ignored or kind of gone other places. The guys that have been here and been a part of the past, we're going to ask them to help us build this thing. And then the current players that we're recruiting right now, the 2022s, the 2023s that are from this say couple hour radius, or downstate Illinois, have got to be Illinois. It's important for that to happen to build the culture of what we're trying to get done. So those things are very exciting. And then, there's a million other things, but I think that's probably the two big ones.
Coach, the other thing, maybe shorter term, because the uniqueness of this year with all the kids you have back, is there greater potential for early success because of some kind of the circumstances you walk into here, as opposed to like normally you take over, it's pretty much a mess.
It's a great question, Bob. I think like these super seniors are a very unique animal, right? They're guys that have been in a situation to leave and they came back. You look just on the defense side of the ball, Tony Adams jumps out right away for us right now. Same thing was Owen Carney. But then you have some true seniors. You got Isaiah Gay that really jumps out. A couple other DBs that are coming back that will be normal seniors that have really stood out. And then offensively, to be quite honest, even though Palcho's not out there, his presence is felt. But you got Kramer, you got Velo, the guys that have been in this program a lot and want to be successful. That's a huge advantage for us right now. Now, the concern, obviously, is the flip side. A year from now, we could potentially lose 2 senior classes. That's yet to be determined by the NCAA. That's why recruiting, especially recruiting in this state, the reason I'm wearing an Illinois High School Coaches Association shirt is it's important to us here, right? It's important for us to build this the right way with Illinois high school players and then branch out around the country to get what we need to get done.
Thanks, Coach. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Hi, Coach. Good to see you. Hopefully at the end of May, the NCAA recruiting dead period is going to come to an end, and they won't lengthen it again. Can you tell me about your approach that first weekend of June with the official visits? Kind of, who are the target? What's the target pool of kids you're going to bring in, and what kind of things do you want to showcase to them?
Good, great question. Obviously, I can't divulge names, but I think our recruiting department has just been so far pretty on top of everything out in advance. It was interesting. We were the first school out of whatever it was, 130 Division I teams that, we started sending out official visit invites, a month ago to our guys, and really want to be ahead of the curve. A lot of people have followed us. It's interesting to see a lot of the same graphics we use. People have copycatted. I think the idea of being first in recruiting is good, but it's not always the end all, right? You got to be thorough in what you're doing. We came in late on certain guys, but when we evaluated, we made a decision off, or we go full throttle, kind of try to focus it in that way. I think June, really from June 1 to June 28th or whatever that cutoff period is going to be in, it's going to, unfortunately for us as coaches, it's going to be a 24/7 job because it's just going to be vital to our program to get as many people on campus as we can, play by the rules they're going to give us. Those still haven't been given to us. We're proactively thinking what they're going to be, but until those finally come through, and then the obvious thing that's concerning to me is just it sounds like it's going to be returned to activity as normal, but yet it could be strictly or directly affected by local policies and rules and governance. So it's not just the University of Illinois, it's the state and everything else. So we're trying to get everything on board right now, even though it's the end of March, so that we can know in April and May where we're going, because June 1, we got to be able to hit the ground running.
And you were pretty aggressive, in the offseason addressing some needs, linebacker, running back, and transfer safety. I know it's limited viewing so far this spring, but do you see any other position groups where you'd like to bolster before next fall and when camp opens?
There's obviously position groups, 3 days into it that we feel, hey, we thought this, and we've maybe confirmed that, or maybe we're starting to think a different direction. I think anytime someone's a good football player and wants to come to Illinois, we got to think about it. I think competition brings the best out of people, both players and coaches. So we're always going to be on the mend. Again, especially, there's so many good players that have left this state with now this transfer portal and grad transfers, that if someone's left the state of Illinois and wants to come back, we're all ears, and that's been a kind of an opening prayer for us when I got here, and have had a lot of people call in with some opportunities. So we'll just continue to explore it and continue to breed it, and hopefully it'll continue to grow.
Last one, Coach. Barry Alvarez announced today that he's going to be retiring, which I'm sure you heard about. Could you comment on that?
You know what? I did see that. I didn't see any formal announcement. Was there a formal announcement from the UW?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, so I appreciate the question. I understand why it's out there, but Coach Alvarez is one of the most important men in my life. Was a huge factor in my success as a college football coach, both as an assistant and as a head coach. And until that announcement, if that announcement comes, I'll save my comments till then. But he's a very special man in my life for sure.
Sounds good. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Hey, Bret, I'll keep with the recruiting theme here. Usually this is a time of year where you get so many visitors for spring practice to come and see your campus. Is that stalled the process at all for you guys, or how do you kind of counteract that without this kind of time to really sell your program?
Jeremy, it's probably one of the more frustrating parts, but it is just part of the world we're living in. So we've been, this room that you see me every day, this Zoom room, it's been noted, obviously my family came to town, but probably a good thing they haven't been here the last 2 months, because I spent more time in this room than any room. Just every day we're trying to, we kind of got a three-tier process of Zooms. The first one is an introduction to our staff, where every member of my staff introduces himself, tells about his family, and then, tours our facility from the ground level to the top level here in the Smith Center. And it's really been overwhelming to me because this building wasn't out there a lot. There wasn't any online things. There were some little digital things, but there wasn't a lot of knowledge about this building because it really opened right when COVID hit. So not a lot of knowledge out there. So we show up to Smith Center, and it's just been absolutely unbelievable the effect that's had in recruiting. The next phase, we'll do an academic Zoom with people that really focuses in on their specifics of what they're doing. And then we get really target specific, so kids that want to be involved in the weight room will have weight rooms. Guys that are involved with position coaches have position coaches. We do anything and everything to gravitate to be around them on a weekly basis through Zoom, and then endless phone calls, texts, messaging, anything we can do. We try to bring that recruiting to them. There is an NCAA rule that allows people to hit campus here. We can't give them tours. We can't be involved with it. We can't talk to them. But it's definitely something that we saw grow across the country, and we've been able to have a few of those players come to our campus, but really we can't visit with them. Now we can't even communicate with them while they're on campus until they're off. So it's, again, there's a lot of protective measures by the NCAA, which I think they're smart to do.
And just to follow up on that, I know there's kind of the life cycle. I don't know, as coaches, do you guys have like a timeline of checkpoints of we'd like this much of our class done by this time, or is that not even a factor?
Jeremy, I've never been one that worried about, who was committed or who wasn't committed. All I can do is worry about the ones we want. I obviously, as a head coach, you'd love to have as many in your boat that you want as early as possible, but you also have to understand that these young men are in a very unique timeline in their life. Their parents, their coaches, they're trying to make it as good as they possibly can. But, until they touch it, see it, feel it, there's a certain amount of limitation or, obstacles to go through. So especially in this COVID world, I'm not overly wrapped up in, I've got to have this number by then. I think when it does break, though, I think when the floodgates open, I would suspect we might get a pretty good flurry of commitments when it does happen at Illinois.
Thanks, Bret.
Yeah.
Brett, I wanted to address the one-on-one kind of deals you do, film reviews with your assistants. We talked to George McDonald the other day. He said he'd been doing this for 20 years and he really hadn't had that one-on-one type of film review with his boss. And it was really, really helpful. Is that something that you picked up from somebody else, or is it something that you've kind of adapted and said, I think this would be a really good idea, let me try it?
It's probably an evolution, Matt, to be honest. I was a young coach. I was in the front of the room. I was an inside linebacker coach at the University of Iowa, and I was coaching a room full of inside linebackers. I'd actually, a couple of them I had played with. So I remember I was sitting there and I was watching Matt Hughes and Vernon Rollins. Matt Hughes was from a small town in Texas, and Vernon Rollins was from Hackensack, New Jersey. And they were sitting there and they were charting something. I don't know what they were charting. I know they were looking at each other and they'd chart something. So we got done with the meeting. It was about an hour long, and said, everybody, hey, you can break the room. I said, Vernon and Matt, I need to hold you here a minute. And they just looked at me because I had their attention. They respected me, but I asked them what they were charting. And they both looked at each other, and I said, I just had a piece of paper, and they were charting the number of times I said, okay, in an hour meeting. And I had a nervous tick that I always said, okay. I was a young coach that was, learning to speak and coach at the same time. I remember Hayden Fry, when he gave me my first job, he said, my two concerns are you've never been a high school coach and you've never been a high school teacher. And I'm like, what do you want me to do? You want me to go back and change my major? I can't do anything about that, coach. So I really didn't know at the time what he meant. But after that first spring football, when I realized that my two best linebackers in the room were concentrating more on how many times I said okay rather than how many times I coached the teaching point, I knew I needed to change. So I asked our video department to set up a camera in the back of my meeting room, and they videoed every one of my meetings. And as an assistant coach, you think you're the greatest assistant coach that ever lived. Well, in reality is we all got work to do. So I learned early on that the best advice I could get was from my own players, but also track my results. So I started videotaping my meetings. So in the course of my career, I've done that, where I videotape coaches' meeting rooms. And then as an individual coach, you aren't exposed to things because you're always working. And unless you have professional development and go outside of your world, you never really get good at individual work. And individual time with your players is on fundamentals, which wins and loses games. So what I love to do is sit back and watch our coaches coach. And then if I can give them a simple thing, right, anything, believe me, George McDonald doesn't need a lot of help. He's one of the best assistant coaches I've ever been around in teaching his wide receivers what they got to do. He sees the big picture, which is why he'll be a great head coach at some point in his life. But what I did is I just tried to specifically look at things that they could get better at, suggest it. It wasn't and it isn't ever a chance for manhood status, right? You just want to get better at everything. We took a simple thing, how to hold a bag. I was watching drills on Tuesday and Thursday, and I was maddening that no one knew how to hold a bag. So we talked about how to hold a bag. We showed our players, and our last two practices have been better because of it. How to finish a drill, how to start a drill, how to face your players and watch them do what you're asking them to do rather than be engaged in the drill itself. There's a lot of different things we went over, and hopefully if Gio took something from it, and our staff, hopefully it makes us better.
Thank you, Brett. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Brett, I wanted to follow up on that a little bit because, like, there has to be a pretty good comfort level between you and, these assistant coaches that you brought in, all of which had pretty good experience coming in here. I mean, how did you know that they were going to respond so positively to that just because of the places they've been and the success they've had in their field?
I get the question. I really didn't think about it that way. I took it more of one of the things I ask our players to do is, right, competition brings the best out of people. I think if I have a room of 10 assistant coaches who want to be the best coach, but more importantly, if they don't want to be the worst one, if you don't want to be the low man on the totem pole, if you don't want to leave that practice field knowing that you just had the worst individual period of all 10 assistant coaches, that builds a lot of pressure to be successful. And that's just kind of where I put it. But I also tell you this, I learn from my assistant coaches every day. I watched my two D-line coaches, or my O-line coach and my D-line coach the other day, and really enjoyed their progression of teaching and what they did. I watched Tony Peterson work with our quarterbacks. There's a big difference between Brandon Peters' mechanics and Isaiah's mechanics, but he was able to work with both of them. I see Corey Patterson, who has got the personality of this world and is relatively new to the running back world. And anything that he does, it's very well thought out. Anything he tries to teach his players is very detailed. So if we just start moving in that direction, we got a chance. I go back a lot to what I've learned in the past. I learned from my head coaches, right? I learned a lot from Hayden Fry to Kirk Ferentz to Bill Snyder to Barry Alvarez to Bill Belichick to Joe Judge. And one of them that jumps out to me, Coach Fry always used to say as a head coach, never ignore something you know and never comment about something you don't, right? So I don't talk to the quarterbacks about throw mechanics. I can see their footwork, but I know that's something that's not my world. I don't talk to a DB about backpedal technique, but I can talk about change of direction. So I never ignore something I know, but I try never to talk about something I don't. May sound silly to say, but that's a very, very driving force of my teaching.
And then I wanted to pivot a little bit here. You talked earlier in the week that Saturday would be a day that you guys could start to see the beginnings of some guys having separation. And has there been anyone in particular, a couple of guys who have stood out over the course of these three practices?
Absolutely. There's guys that have carried what we did Tuesday and Thursday into Saturday, and you kind of had a feeling that was going to happen. And that was more probably, Joey, in the individual drills. Like we did three things today. We did a pods drill, we did a catch and tuck, and we did a Illini drill that really kind of put guys one-on-one and made them be good in the moment they're in. The group settings are going to take some time. Like inside we did 6 plays and I just stopped it and we went back to play 1 and did it again. And thankfully the 6 plays that we did at the second time were a lot better than the first 6. So that's going to take a little bit of progress. But when you're in an individual drill, just one-on-one with another player, and there might be another ball carrier involved in the cut or the reaction. There's a reason coaches I always love defensively, I love guys who are wrestlers because you put a wrestler out on the mat, it's just him against the other guy in the middle of a big circle and no one else to hide behind. All right, that official's not going to give you any shelter, and neither is anybody else. So I love the competitive nature of wrestling. I get everything else. Like I'm not saying anything about anything else, but like I always thought guys that had success on the wrestling mat were really true great competitors. And that's kind of always carried my thoughts into the football world as well. I don't really want to get into names just because I don't want to put any pressure on someone this early. I think the guys in the room know who they are. And then there are also a couple surprises. Right after we did practice today, I cut up 32 plays from our individual drills, one-on-ones, and put them on big screen. And there was definitely some oohs and ahs and some laugh and also some curious eyes just the way guys competed today. So it's fun to bring that to their attention.
Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Brett, going to go back to recruiting here real quick. When people talk about recruiting, I think for the most part, they consider, the 11-man game, but the 8-man game is growing in this state. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on how you recruit that game and if the approach changes at all and what thoughts you have about that style of football.
Well, I've recruited one 8-man football player. His name was Chad Greenway, and he later became the 15th pick in the first round. Was a pretty good player. So my batting percentage in 8-man football is pretty good. So we'll get into it. We'll love it, embrace it, especially here in the state as it grows. I first heard this when I was at the Illinois High School Coaches Clinic, the one that I stopped in on one of their meetings and learned about all the changes that were coming with 8-man football. So it doesn't matter if it's 8-man, 3-man, or 11-man or 12-man in the Canadian world, right? The fact that they're playing football and they do the things that compete, that's going to be important to us. I think the fact that you can see a player play both ways commonly in 8-man football adds a lot of incentive to recruiting it. And sometimes good things come from little places, and that's definitely something we'll thoroughly check out.
Thanks, Brett.
Yep.
Hey, Coach, I like what you said about, this is week one. We can never get it back. Do you feel like your time was maximized in this week, or do you foresee, maybe some improvements coming in the next week?
Marley, it's something I just really believe in, right? So just like you at work, right? You're working for Channel 3. If your last one wasn't as good as you want the next one to be better. As a player, we have to operate the same way, right? As coaches, we got to be the same thing. We talk and keep stacking days. There's a million different ways to say it, but if we just keep moving forward, it's going to be a general progression to hopefully really good things. If we try to jump to week 4, practice 12, we're never going to enjoy the process of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. So every one of these practices they've learned, they're really, really locked in and interactive. When I get up in front of that room, I see a lot of engaging eyes. There's no one that's giving me a bad look or a bad taste. I think everybody's kind of buying in to some point. They will. There's going to come a point where someone's going to have a bad day. Somebody's going to have a Debbie Downer look, and we're going to have words. But, for the most part, everything's been pretty good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks,
Thank
Brett.
you. You guys have a great weekend.